Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a quiz to test your support knowledge. Now for today we're going to be focusing on the early game, and we're going to look at one game from an Engager and one game from an Enchanter. And then if this is something that you guys enjoy, we can look at more quizzes in the future. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so we're going to start off with an Engager game. And I don't want to give too much context because that might lead you onto specific answers, and I really want you guys to think about the situation holistically by yourselves and really challenge yourself to come up with the best solution that you can before I jump into the answers. So the situation, we are Israel Rakan, we're versus Kate Karma. We've gotten chunked out. They're going to crash a wave. They're probably looking to base. And what I want you guys to think about is what to do with this following wave. Okay? So I'm just going to play it out a little bit more, and then I'm going to give you some options. So they're backing off. We're collecting this wave under tower. All right. The four options that we can do from this situation. Should we, A, shove next wave? So here comes this wave. We can shove the incoming wave. Or we can base after catching this wave under tower. That would be B. Or we can build and crash a stacked wave. So maybe we stay in lane. We don't hard shove the next wave, and then the following wave we look to stack and crash that wave. That would be option C. Or option D, we hang around awkwardly and wait for your ADC to make a decision for you. So take some time to yourself now, think through the options A to D, pause the video if you need to, and we're going to start discussing the options now. Okay, let's talk about option A and its merits in terms of shoving this next wave. They are looking to base, and they already have the wave shoved into us, and so they can base earlier. The next wave is a cannon. It's quite early on in the game. There's no way that we can reliably clear out this wave too fast. And so the danger about trying to shove this wave and then base is that it's very likely we're not going to be able to crash this wave into their tower before they come back to lane. And in that situation, it'll be really awkward. We're trying to crash a wave way up here. We're low health and mana. They come back full health, full mana with an item advantage. We could even get ganked. It looks really scary. And so this is an option that a lot of players would choose to do just because they haven't really thought it out in advance. It's like the muscle memory is to just try and shove out a wave and crash it so you can get a good wave state. But oftentimes when you're losing in situations like this, you don't have that luxury. The next option is to base after catching this wave under tower. And so this is like, it's not going to be the absolute best situation that you would want to be, but maybe it's the best of bad situations. You're losing prior, you get to catch all these minions, you base, you come back to lane, you get to catch all of those minions, and your wave state is fine. You'll be able to deal with it and find a path forwards. And so this is the option that you need to start thinking about if you're in a losing lane, right? Where Israel Rakan versus Kate Karma, really tough matchup. It shows here we got chunked, we're losing pressure. And so this is the only consistent option that we can take to not lose any minions and to be able to come back to lane and actually be able to do something with the wave state. Option C, to build and crash a stacked wave. So the problem with this one is that it will give them plenty of time to come back from base and start to pressure us. And although we do have maybe some more safety in crashing a stacked wave closer to our tower than trying to hard shove and then ensure that wave crashes, we do not have the resources, the HP, the mana, or the items to really ensure that we can crash that wave. And the other thing is, if the enemy, the enemy mid, the enemy jungle, they see that we're staying in lane for so long on such low HP, and we're trying to crash a stacked wave and slowly moving further and further up the lane, then we can be easily collapsed on and die. And then option D, hang around awkwardly and let your ADC make a decision for you. Although no one actively chooses this option, I see this option play out a lot. Take agency, make a decision, commit to that decision, and learn from those decisions. And don't rely on your teammates to make your decisions for you. You want to be the X factor so that you can consistently climb. So the best option for this example is to base immediately after catching this stacked wave. If this wasn't a cannon wave, then maybe you can make an argument to crash this incoming wave quickly and then base. And just so that you guys can see what we actually decided with, we decided on option B, base after catching this wave under tower. I'm just prepping some of the last hits for my Ezreal, and then I'm immediately looking to back off and recall and communicate that I want my ADC to back off as well. Okay, we're going to look at one more wave decision option tree. So I need to give a little bit of context here. We just killed the Caitlyn. She is just spawning from her base right about now. And I want you to take as much in of the situation that you can, okay? I'm not going to say any more, but here are the options. What should we do with this wave state? Option A, should we hold the freeze? Option B, should we roam? Should we look to move into fog, start to roam around the map? Or option C, should we crash next wave? Should we start to try to hard shove this and then crash the following wave coming out here? Okay, take some time, really think about it, and I'll give you the answers soon. Okay, let's discuss option A, hold a freeze. The reason that I don't like holding a freeze in this situation is for two reasons. One, it's post 8 minutes, Herald is on the map. If you're actively hanging around bot and just trying to hold a freeze, then you're giving up an opportunity to start pressuring the map, facilitating mid, grouping up around top river with your team to get Herald, which is a huge deal. And the next reason is that the longer that you're going to be hanging around on map with low HPs, you're kind of pressured to find a base when you're low. And if you're holding a freeze, you're not able to base. And if you try and hold a freeze and then base, then they come back to lane and then they crash that wave and then you start to lose a lot of minions under tower as well. So although you can deny some minions before Caitlyn comes back to lane, after she comes back to lane, we're going to be in a really awkward spot because we're not going to be able to find a good wave state to crash. She's going to start to push us under tower. We're never going to crash it under their tower and find that base. Okay, let's briefly talk about the next option, to roam. And so this isn't a bad option on paper. You don't want to be hanging around bot. You want to look to pressure the rest of the map. However, roaming right now, again, a couple reasons why it's not the best decision. First, because our mid laner, is towards the top side of the map, and our jungler is in our lane. So we can't realistically achieve too much on our roam window right now. And the next is that, once again, we're low. So we go and roam. If it doesn't really work out, then our tempo is so bad, we need to find a base and come back out on the map, and then we're going to start missing a lot of opportunities from all of that time wasted. So in another situation, maybe when us as Rakan is full health and our mid and jungle is more active around the middle of the map, then this could be a good option, but not here. And then option C, crashing next wave. This is the decision that is optimal in this situation. You get to crash a wave into the enemy tower. You can generate some tempo. So then coming out of base, you have a lot of time to roam around and pressure the map. You give your Israel a lot of gold with which to spend when he does base, and then you can start pressuring around the middle of the map to facilitate Herald. And so this is the option that we do decide to go for. We're just going to play it out here. This is the wave that I am looking to crash, and so I start hard shoving now. And so we're going to look to crash. The fight is not necessarily part of the macro decision here. It's just imagine that we successfully crash this wave, and then we base, and then we come back out on the map. We pressure around mid for this window, and eventually Eve is going to be here. We meet Eve here, we get Herald, and then all is well. Everyone is happy in that situation, right? Israel got to spend a lot of gold and has a good wave state. We pressure around mid, we group out with our jungler. It's just a great spot to be in. Okay, so the next question we're going to have a look at is not to do with waves, it's to do with the decision after a play has happened, okay? So let's just briefly have a look at what happens here. We get a pick onto the enemy jungler, and now we need to make a decision. Okay, so the options are A, go top, B, go mid, C, go bot, or D, follow your jungler. Take a second, pause the video, think about these options, and I will see you shortly. Okay, so what's going on here? We just killed the enemy jungler. We're linked up with our jungler. We just have heralds. We have some top minions here. And so you can definitely make an argument to go top here. It's going to be very hard for the enemy team to have counterplay because their jungler just died. And so if we go top right now, that means that we want to use this wave. And so should we hard shove this wave into tower and then, dive the cannon and look to use the heralds? That would be a decent option and an argument to go top. Let's think about going mid for a second. And so mid, the wave has just crashed. We don't really have any wave to work with here. But if we facilitate our Galio and help get mid prio on this wave, then we can bring Galio up towards top and crash this giant stacked wave and get a lot more out of the play. And so in an ideal world, the support and the jungler are just kind of pressuring in this general area. We get mid prio on this wave, we bring Galio towards top side, and we use this wave, and we just dive the cannon, we deny tons of minions, we get the entire tower, we might even get a second charge with a Herald onto the tier 2. In terms of going bot, now a lot of the times you do want to go bot after you get a Herald. If they are stacking a bot wave and your ADC is under a lot of pressure, maybe they're going to get dove, maybe your tower plates are just, falling rapidly and you want to base, you want to minimize the enemy's counterplay. However, in this situation, our ADC is getting access to this wave. He's full health, he's full mana, he's not under immediate threat, and so we do have a lot of space right now with which to try and pressure the map proactively instead. And then D, in terms of following your jungler, although you do want to group up with your jungler so that you can reliably make plays, right now we need a direction. We need to figure out where we should be pressuring instead. And so what you want to do is, postulate the best play. And then if your jungler listens to you and follows, fantastic. If your jungler doesn't listen and they do their own thing, then maybe you just have to follow them. But we want to put the onus of proactivity and decision making on ourselves so that we can carry. So absolute best play, go mid prio on this wave, stack a top wave, deny and dive that stacking top wave. The next best option, and maybe it's going to be hard to coordinate something like that in solo queue, the lower elo that you are, the next option, we can just crash this wave immediately and meet up right here, right now, and try to get as much as we can from that. And so what ends up happening is we're a little bit slow on the uptake here to make a decision. You can see that we are looking to use this incoming wave here. And so what should have happened is that we didn't really do one or the other, right? We should have been facilitating our Galio on this mid wave. We should have been having this top wave in mind. But we kind of leave our mid out to dry, and then we start to look to use this top wave here. And so it's a bit sloppy, but the end result is we decide to go top, we use that top wave, we execute a kill, whether it was before the wave crashes or as a dive, it wouldn't really matter. And then we're going to really snowball the game from this. Okay, so the last question for the Engager game, we're about 10 seconds after the last question. So we just got the kill, we crashed the wave, and we're looking to path out of base now. And so where do you guys think that we should go from base? Should we go top? Should we go mid? Should we go bot? Should we path between mid and bot through this base gate and end up around the jungle? Take a second, pause the video, think about it, and I will see you soon. Okay, so let's talk about the first option, going top. We just came from top. We killed the top laner. We're getting the top tower. There is nothing really to be achieved by pathing top here whatsoever. We've expended our tempo. We've done our play. It's no longer our turn to do anything proactive on the top side of the map. In terms of going mid, the enemy mid is clearing out our mid wave without any resistance. Our mid laner is coming out of base. And so realistically, we shouldn't expect to achieve much by pathing mid from base here. Our jungler made a play topside, our mid is off the map. So unless we think it's likely that Sylas is going to overstay, maybe he's going to greed for a plate and he's going to hang around for ages and our jungler comes down, that's the only situation we can achieve something by pathing mid. But again, this is probably not the best option that we can choose. Let's have a think about going bot instead. And so we made a top play. The enemy is starting to control bot now. They're starting to chip away on our tower. And this is their area to counterplay, right? Maybe their mid laner shoves and then moves down and then tries to use this following bot wave to dive the ADC. This is very likely. The enemy jungle is almost certainly on bot side of the map because there's nothing for him to achieve on top side. And so in this situation, when it's so clear that we shouldn't pass top and when it is not looking likely for us to achieve anything by pathing mid, then pathing bot here is probably the best decision to minimize our ADC losing waves and to minimize our tower from bleeding plates and to potentially prevent a dive. Now the final option, pathing through the base gate, this is the second best option. This gives you a chance to react to whatever might happen. Maybe you can react to a skirmish that unfolds here, although it is unlikely. Maybe you can get some wards around this area so that you can see that dive coming. But again, this state of the map, it's quite clear that this is our strong side, this is our weak side, and we just need to try and defend and minimize bot as much as possible. Now, with that being said, this is an interesting example because what I said is unlikely actually does happen. Sylas hangs around mid instead of moving down to use the stacking bot wave with his jungler. He greeds for a plate. My jungler decides to collapse on mid. My mid lane is coming back out onto the map. And so maybe pathing through base gate to be able to react to this opportunity, has a strong argument for it. Instead, what I decided is to run straight bot to ensure that I can prevent them from achieving too much with this crashing bot wave. Okay, let's move on to an Enchanter game. We're going to start off with just one wave decision question. This is from one of my students from the perspective of a Lulu. So we're Caitlin Lulu into MF Bard over here. And the decision I want you guys to think about is what to do with the next incoming wave. The options are, should we shove the next wave, the third wave? Should we let the wave push into you? Or should we build a stacked wave? Take a second, pause the video, I'll see you soon. Okay, so let's talk about option A, shoving the next wave. And this is going to tie into that perma war of attrition idea that I talk about in my videos as a ranged versus ranged matchup. Shoving constantly, creating that slow bleed win condition, you know, poking them when they deal with minions in their faces, and when they go for last hits, they'll naturally lose minions to the tower, will naturally chip their tower, will naturally cause their mid and their jungler to try to relieve pressure down here. And this is probably going to be the only realistic way that we can pressure this lane right now. And the reason that we would want to choose to shove this incoming wave, even if the jungler could potentially look to gank us, is because we are range versus range. Us, as a range champ, especially as an enchanter, we have some disengage and utility tools to dissuade a gank. So let's say Poppy looks for a gank, we're versus a range champ. Range champs don't really have the greatest gank setup, and we are able to potentially slow the incoming Poppy gank with our Q, shield, our ADC, etc. And so that's what we want to do. We want to get ganked. We want to draw pressure so that their jungler is instead almost forced to relieve pressure down here instead of being efficient with their clear or ganking lanes where they might be more successful. Let's talk about option B, letting the wave push into you. And this would be an option if you are scared of the Poppy ganking and killing you. But in this situation, I believe that respect is unwarranted. This Poppy gank doesn't deserve so much respect that you stop shoving and pressuring, and instead you just try to hold a freeze. And so if you let the wave push into you, you're passing up on the opportunity to pressure as much as possible. It's also unlikely that you are going to be able to maintain a freeze versus two ranged champs, because they're ranged, they can deal with frozen waves more easily, and then you're just going to be losing 2v2. The final option, build a stacked wave. Now this is an enticing option on paper, but it's just not really possible right now. And the reason that it's going to be hard to build a stacked wave is because we're versus ranged champions. And so we're not going to be able to zone them off of the wave to be able to stack a wave and crash that stacked wave. Especially because trying to zone them off the wave and creating that stacked wave, we're going to need to position forwards in the lane, opening ourselves up to that gank more easily by the Poppy. So the best play is shove out the second wave, get some vision in the river to deter the Poppy gank, potentially position on either on the middle of the lane or on this side of the lane to deter that Poppy gank, and otherwise pressure 2v2, shove waves as much as possible. And because this Lulu is a great student, that's exactly what happens. We are going to start to shove this wave, and I just want to give a quick example of what that perma war of attrition can result in. We're getting prio, we're looking to poke and harass, maintaining minion HP advantage. Next wave comes in, we're going to shove that as well. All the meanwhile, the enemy jungler is under immense pressure to try and relieve some pressure down here. We're poking, we're shoving, we're not giving them a foothold in the lane whatsoever. And now they're potentially diveable because they're so low. And if the Poppy had decided to gank bot instead of moving towards top, it would have been very easy to just dissuade that gank with a Q, don't stand by a wall, and then we're pretty much safe. Okay, next question. We're skipping forwards like 10-15 seconds. What happened is we successfully dove the MF and the Bard, and this is the situation right now. We're pathing out of base. I want you guys to think about where we should path from base. Options are path top, path mid, path bot, or path through the base gate between mid and bot. Take a second, really think about it, and we'll discuss it shortly. Okay, let's discuss option A, pathing top. The reason that this is just an absolute no-no is because we don't have any boots, any mobility. It's a tank versus tank matchup. We have a wave that is pushing into them, and so unless we can get here really fast and dive them, and then that dive is actually meaningful in the top matchup and the pace of the game, then maybe you can make an argument for it, but in general, stay away from top, and definitely in this situation, we would not want to pass top here. Next option is to path mid. And so pathing straight mid here, it's going to be unlikely that we're going to achieve anything. If we just path straight mid, Kennen is just kind of shoving a wave in, and if they see us in mid, they're just going to back off. And so we're not going to be able to achieve anything mid. So that leaves the next two options. Should we path through the base gate between mid and bot to give ourselves options to react to whatever we need to, or should we path straight bot? So let's talk about pathing straight bot first. What happened is we got the 2 kills on the enemy bot laners. Our ADC, we know that they have a lot of money. We know that they haven't shopped yet, and they really, really, really need to find a base. It's very important. And so what we don't want to do is come back bot, and then our ADC doesn't get to base. What we don't want to do is come back bot, and then we're unable to hold a freeze, because that would be the only argument you can make to path bot here. The next incoming wave here, we come back here and we try to hold the freeze. And so that would allow our ADC to potentially catch the minions. But we're going to be completely by ourselves because we're coming out of base. Our ADC hasn't even started basing yet, and we are not going to be able to hold a freeze 1v2. And so there's no point being bot, achieving absolutely nothing. The only option that leaves us with is pathing through the base gate, through the jungle area here towards mid. And what we will achieve by doing that is we will be staying in fog so that the enemy team does not know exactly where we are. That makes all of their decisions a little bit trickier. It also allows us to potentially wrap around on this Kennen and kill him. You know, we have an Irelia, she can dash through the minions, and we can potentially achieve something here. Either we chunk him out, or we kill him, or we prevent him from crashing this wave. So what ends up happening is, unfortunately, Kennen is allowed to crash this wave, but we are still taking the correct path here. We're staying in fog, they don't know where we are. We're going to take this window to just drop a ward somewhere around a camp, which will get us valuable information. We do have vision set up here already to dominate in the 2v2. And the alternative is we would be bot, we would be showing on the map, and we would just be soaking up XP. We would just be an XP sponge, which I really dislike as a win condition for supports in general. And being in this position would allow us to react to a skirmish if it were to potentially unfold, or if Kennen was to hang around for an extra wave to shove to try and get a better base or something. Okay, next question. Here we are, 30 seconds approximately later into the game. We notice the Poppy on our vision here doing Krugs right near our lane. What should we do? Should we A, run away, B, by all means ignore her, or should we C, ping our jungler? Have a think about what each of these might mean. Pause the video. I'll see you soon. Okay, let's talk about the option of running away. And you would want to choose this option if you think that Poppy could kill you with a gank. However, like we talked about earlier, the Poppy gank here, even though Bard can potentially portal through a wall here, we have vision of this that could happen, and we have sufficient disengage with our Q and our W and our E. And so I don't think it is necessary to run away from here. If we run away, we're also kind of telegraphing that we know Poppy is here. Maybe we have a ward somewhere, and Poppy just doesn't waste any more time posturing, looking here. She just realizes and instantly starts to clear other camps or look to pressure other lanes. The ignore option, so this would just be to pretend that, you know, you don't see her, you carry on your life and your 2v2 lane as per usual. And I think this is the best option here because, once again, there is no threat of Poppy ganking and killing you. Bard really can't set up the gank very well. If they just telegraph portal through a tunnel, you can just queue them both and stay away from each other so you don't get double stunned by Bard. Stay away from a wall so you don't get charged by Poppy, and then it's just going to be a waste of time from Poppy. As long as you make sure that you are on either the middle or the top side of the lane so that you don't give the enemy team complete access to your ADC, then you can by all means ignore that Poppy is even here in the first place. And this is why we want to do this Pima War of Attrition style, because we know that we can disengage these weak ganks that would come from this range versus range matchup. The third and final option, ping your jungler. This is the second best or the second worst, depending on how you want to see it. How you want your jungler to interact with your lane when you play this 2v2 Pima War of Attrition, you don't want them to interact with your lane. You want them to be efficient. You want them to counter jungle or do neutral objectives or pressure other lanes. This is because you know that you can be self-sufficient in the 2v2. You know that you can even waste time in a 2v3. And you also know that since you're shoving up, not only is the wave state awkward for your jungler to gank, but your champion, your ranged enchanter, is not good at setting up those ganks. And so by all means, you really want your jungler to stay away from your lane. You don't want to ping your jungler here. You want to waste the enemy jungler's time. And this is especially evident in this situation where you have a Karthus. And obviously Karthus wants to really power farm up, have that level 6, and be as efficient as possible. So let's see what ends up happening. We don't back off. So we start to suggest a little bit of body language that we're respecting this, but you know, we're not running back to our tower. Maybe we could play the acting game a little bit better here, stand a little bit further up and then back off once they line up a portal. But this is good positioning. And then we see them portal through. We know that this is not a scary gank whatsoever. We can easily disengage this even in a 2v3 situation. And then our Karthus kind of shows up, and now he doesn't really have much to do. And so we didn't ping the jungler, but this is a good example of why you don't really want your jungler in this range versus range matchup to interact with your lane. So now that Karthus doesn't really have too much to do when he could have been putting his camps on cooldown a little bit faster. Okay, last question we're going to ask for today. And I wanted to end with a pretty tricky one. So this is the situation. Just pay attention to how the map is playing out, okay? The options here. What should we do? How should we pressure the map right now? Should we clear this wave and then base, option A? Or B, should we look to team fight on dragon? Or option C, should we look to pressure bot? I really want you guys to think about this one. Pause the video and I'll see you soon. Now the best answer in this situation is going to be a little bit tricky. So starting with shoving this wave and basing, we potentially could. It would be the safe option. We wouldn't necessarily lose anything. However, we do have some more options in this situation, especially because of how dominant the 2v2 lane has gone and us having 3 wards to be able to drop a vision line so that we can freely play for something a little bit more enticing. Option B, team fight on dragon. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Although our ADC is very fed, our top laner, notice he doesn't have TP up. He is very far behind. Our mid laner is dead. They have a fed Kennen. What do you think Kennen's identity is? How does Kennen carry a game? Kennen carries a game by team fighting, by finding these 5v5s and just one-shotting the backline. And so if we group up, first of all, our mid lane is dead, so there's not many people to group up with. We are going to be playing into their win condition and potentially get one shot by the Kennen. All the meanwhile, MF and Bard can group up in this 5v5 and just allow themselves to get carried. What we really need to do in this situation is option C, pressure bot. It ties perfectly into Caitlyn's identity as well in terms of accelerating, snowballing the bot lead. Especially getting first tower here while the plate is still up, we can really start to accelerate. And the strength of winning this perma war of attrition is always drawing pressure, having higher tempo than the enemy. And this dragon isn't the be-all and end-all of this game. We did get the first dragon. We don't need to rely on every dragon this game to win. We have an amazing ADC win condition. We're snowballing. We're going to be scaling up with the Lulu, enchanting them. And we just want to play our game here instead of playing into the enemy win condition in terms of those team fights. Maybe there would be a similar situation like this where our mid laner and jungler is in a bit of a better position and we can group up and we can take this dragon reliably and they don't have such amazing team fight of themselves. Then sure, we can look to contest the dragon, but here we really need a snowball bot. We really want their MF and Bards to feel the pressure and feel themselves slowly losing control and not being able to just group up with their strong members and get carried. So picture this team fight where this really weak MF and Bard just gets to sit behind their potential front line, press their ults, be useful, and all the meanwhile we get one shot and throw our team's only win condition here of being an accelerated ADC. So what ends up happening is us as the Lulu don't make a clear decision. We're grouping up with our team. We lose this minion wave. And then the next minion wave that is coming in, we're not necessarily posturing to pressure with that wave. And then the enemy bot laner can kind of reorganize themselves and position where they want to. And now we were kind of awkwardly in the river and we don't really have that tempo lead anymore. We're not dictating the pace of the game. And now anything can happen. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this type of video. If you got 6 or more out of 8, I think it's fair to say that you have a great understanding of the game alongside the fundamentals. And it's also quite likely you've been exposed to my coaching in some way. This is a very different idea for a video, so if you do enjoy it, please let me know and I can make more like this. If you prefer the traditional style of educational content, I'm more than happy to mainly do those as well. Please consider liking and subscribing, but only if you enjoyed the content. And I would encourage you to check out my School of Support Discord server. The link is going to be in the description below to join a growing community of dedicated supports. For coaching, for individual coaching, for group coaching through my School of Support, the Patreon link and the relevant links for those are going to be in the description below as well. I want to thank my current Patrons for their continued support to help me be able to do what I love as a full-time occupation. Thanks again for watching and goodbye.